Hi everyone, I'm Wendy Muirhead and I am delighted to introduce you to 5 o'clock somewhere because it's always 5 o'clock somewhere in the world. In my career, I have the joy of working with thought leaders every single day. And this is a great opportunity and platform to share some of those great conversations with you. I hope you find it enjoyable and insightful. Take care. Emma, it is absolutely wonderful to have you join us on 5 o'clock somewhere today. How are you, my friend?
I am very well, thank you, Wendy. Yes, even better for speaking to you today.
Oh, you should be in sales, Emma.
You are topping off the end of my week this week, so.
Oh, good. Well, how are you? You well?
I am. Yes, cracking straight back into 2021 with a vengeance.
New year.
Yeah.
New year. Hopefully only way is up. That is absolutely right. So, Emma, we both work in an amazing industry and I love being on stage with you. So thank you so much for giving us some time today. What is it that you're seeing in the industry at the moment that's really exciting you?
I think for me, and you'll know this from speaking to me before, Wendy, but for me, it's just how people are doing things differently. Whenever I speak to an HR director or their HRLT or an HR shared service leader, it's how are you starting to push boundaries and challenge that kind of status quo about some of the perceptions around what HR is there to do, the role that we play versus what we know we want to do. And I think kind of what I've really enjoyed personally over the past couple of years, particularly in the role that I've now got at Lace, is having more of those conversations and stress testing. Well, why is it that we are struggling to do what we want to do? Is it investment? Is it our own ambition? Is it lack of the mindset that we need to have? And helping clients think through that. It's just fascinating to me, and everyone's got a different approach to it too, which I find really interesting.
They absolutely do. So what are you seeing? So with some of the different approaches, what are the different approaches and how do they vary?
Yeah, I think for me, it's there's quite a lot of innovation. I mean, particularly in the technology space, that's a given, but it's more actually innovating how the function works with other parts of the business. So in a couple of organizations that I've spoken to over the past few months, there's definitely been more of a connect between HR and real estate. Actually, interestingly, in one organization, real estate is owned by HR. Which is fascinating. I don't necessarily think that's common in lots of organizations, but it immediately breaks down one of those big silos. And if we think about obviously everything that's gone on over the 2020 coming into this year and beyond now, thinking about the future, that partnership I think is going to become ever more important than it has ever been before. And kind of breaking down those silos and actually start to think about things end to end, which we talk about so much. But when push comes to shove, I think there's that tendency to revert back to the comfort zone and the norms.
People always do that, don't they? They, like you gravitate to what you know because it's a comfort blanket. Whereas sometimes just opening up a little bit further and collaborating and taking that brave step of doing something slightly different can see huge steps forward from just even a reward and efficiency point of view.
Yeah, and I think some of the approaches in terms of perhaps the role of people advisor in some organizations that again I've spoken to is really interesting, because if you think about kind of now there's so many differences around policies, ways of working, the role that kind of maybe that frontline advisory capability plays within HR is changing. We need to be much more resilient. There's lots now around well-being. So clearly that's something that HR has been focusing on and will need to continue focusing on. But I guess I'm sensing a bit of innovation and a change in maybe who owns that within the HR function, and perhaps more of that falling into the kind of people advisory type role within shared services, for example. I mean, why would it not? It's that end-to-end kind of role, particularly then if you're putting in technology to enable some of that digitization of some of their more routine activities. There's much more opportunity, I think, to play in that space than there has been before as well.
You just made me think there about, an interesting concept around, that end-to-end holistic viewpoint in terms of people's roles and how, people are approaching that sort of model within HR. Do you think that's enhanced? There's a lot of technology providers that do technology that's full end-to-end, and then there's others that are best of breed. They're really focusing in their sweet spot of domain excellence. So do you think that that enhanced role has an impact with having an end-to-end type technology platform? And do you not think it really matters to be able to get the end result, particularly thinking about that role? I'm thinking around that view of
Good
it.
question. I mean, I'd actually say in some respects it doesn't really matter, because technology, same as process, same as other tools that you might have, even if you're on Excel, some organizations still are, they're just enablers to achieving an outcome. So actually, it's more the behaviors, I think, the conversations that happen, the way work goes from A to B to C, and those teams come together, than necessarily having to fixate on, if I've got something that's one solution end to end that does all of the things in HR, versus if I've got a bit of a mix of best of breed, and then kind of a core platform. There's no one size fits all. And actually, as I say, I don't think that really matters so much. It's the enabler to having the conversations and achieve the outcome.
Yeah. I actually think that you touched on a really good point. And I talk a lot to people around, especially from a leadership point of view. It's not the message, it's the execution of the message. And it's the art of being able to do that in a way that makes people feel positive and encouraged, and able to drive it forward. And it's a lot of similarities there. So, Emma, moving into a brand new year.
Yes.
And what is it that you think are the exciting trends that we're going to see in 21 and beyond? And what, in your feel of the market and all the great conversations that you're having with organizations, what is it that you're hearing more and more and more of?
Yep. So I think one of the really interesting ones for me is, we've talked quite a bit in the past about the need to build digital skills, not just in HR, but across businesses and organizations. I think there's still the requirement for that. But what's interesting for me in that conversation is, where do you get the skills from? I think there's an assumption that we can probably get all of that in the marketplace, i.e. it's easier to buy it than it necessarily is to build it. And I was reading an article I think it was from Gartner, who was saying that was kind of the trend. And I sit there thinking, well, yes, that is one way of doing it. But if there's only a finite talent pool of individuals in the marketplace that have digital skills, or whatever skill you're looking for, because it isn't just about digital skills, there's loads of different skills we know we're going to need this year, next year, 10 years from now, then we're going to have to start building those. And so for me, that becomes then very interesting when thinking about learning and talent strategies, as much as also then the strategic workforce planning element of that. And I think there is a bit of assumption still that in the strategic workforce plan, HR leaders will go to market to buy what they need to buy, but we've got to make sure that we have the development and career paths internally to build those skills, because we can't rely on a marketplace that has a finite talent pool. So that's going to be really interesting, I think, in that war for talent future.
And do you, again, you spark some really great thoughts of conversation I've had with others lately around the build of talent and where to get it, especially with new talent, and especially with the current educational situation with, kids aren't getting the same access to school. They're having to, learn online. And, if you don't have a laptop, it's on the news now with people that don't have those, the assets to be able to help their child to learn well. So I think there's a real duty of care for us in business to be able to support and make sure that there's not a class divide, or, a divide in that talent potential, because of where somebody's been impacted by the education situation, or where they live in the UK or in the rest of the world. So what would be your steer around building that? So these new sources of areas of expertise that we're going to need as things progress, are you looking at, are you guiding people about looking at education or at universities, or even earlier? Or what,
I was going to say, actually, so if you think about kind of in the past, traditional career path for most people would be do my A-levels, go to university, and then I might get my job. But over the past few years, we've definitely seen more of a shift to thinking about apprenticeships. And I'd say I think we're going to see more and more of that personally. Why would you not just go straight in and get some of those skills, particularly early careers wise? Some organizations are looking at that and have great approaches to it. Others, I think, have an opportunity to look at that more now as well. And whole, you said being remote as well, it just opens up different avenues for people that perhaps weren't there before, and hopefully it will break down some barriers with the exceptions that you've said around making sure people have the right access. Hopefully it will dispel some of those traditional stereotypical norms perhaps that have been in place in the past. So I think from that side, it's quite exciting when you think about the talent opportunities now for people, and we need to just make sure that we look at those appropriately and open them up as much as we can.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think the other thing as well, when you see those opportunities, making sure that you've got a fair way of governing them so that there's, real transparency as to, earning potential, reducing the gender pay gap. I'm really passionate about those things. So actually, having the ability to be able to do that and widening the talent pools. I remember years ago, I didn't get a job because I didn't live in London. And they wanted me for the role. And I was like, I was meeting the MD of the organization. And then when the MD realized I was in Scotland, it was like, oh, thanks, but no thanks, goodbye. And what an impact that organization had on my career. I would never look at even entertaining that concept again. And that's really important when we're going out looking for new talent and having the accessibility to do it with the remote working aspects. It's really critical.
And I think kind of, if you look at kind of generations now, they expect different things from their employers, and they expect different things from leadership and the culture of an organization. And I was reflecting on this earlier this week with one of our team, and we were saying there's been very much a parent-child kind of dialogue going on over the past few months, particularly this sort of March, April, May time last year when COVID first hit. You need some direction so that people just know that they're being reassured that the right thing's happening. But actually that's not really the right thing culturally to continue within an organization. And I think we're at that tipping point where, how do you change that parent-child behavior whilst maintaining the right culture that you want to have? And massive question around EVP. What type of culture do we want in organizations now, where people's view of work and life is probably quite different to maybe where it was a year ago? I mean, I know mine certainly is. I love my job and I love working with the teams that I work with, but it's not the be all and end all. Had you asked me that a couple of years ago, I probably would have said maybe it was more important. And that's just where I was, where my head was at. But it's not now. It's changed certain perceptions for me. And that's a good thing. It's a healthy thing. But that will be interesting to see how certain leaders, I think, react to that in organizations when maybe they've been in that role for so long that it's just not normal for them.
No, that's really interesting. And I think I've seen a lot of organizations that are really sort of driven for the fun aspect of the role. And I've actually started to see more of a shift towards the fairness and the transparency and the equitable ownership of the role. And, I'm a big believer on if everyone owns and carries their part in the organization, it makes an organization great, and everyone's driving in that vision the same way. And that's one of the things that I've just seen a slight shift. You can still have fun and have great conversations and have trust in a family environment. And I know that your organization is very family orientated feel, same as mine. And I think that's why our organizations like chatting with each other and we all get on so well. And I can't wait to get to London again so we could go out for that glass of wine. Not that I need that glass of wine, but I love it when we're
the together. Social interaction, exactly.
Exactly. We miss that side of it. But I am seeing that real shift. And I think that personally, I'm very excited about seeing, more and more organizations that actually put that power into the employees, because we've both had conversations before where talent will walk. There's so much opportunity out there. Talent, if they're really wedded to the organization, they will never even consider it. But when opportunities arise, they may, if they're not really well looked after and have the ownership and have the accountability and can drive their ideas and be part of something great. And I think that's a big shift that I've seen. What's your view?
No, I absolutely agree. And I think you'll get in every organization there are subcultures, but that's so powerful, I think, to think about the organicness of a culture, because it changes over time. I think it's going to change more and more rapidly and become potentially more and more fluid, particularly as there isn't going to be this whole you're in the office 5 days a week or you're on site 5 days a week if you're in a frontline role, for example, and not office based. There will be some changes of that. People will do it maybe 2-3 days a week, but it won't always be the same days. So all of these new cultural norms, I think, are going to come to fruition, and it will change over time. And how do you know that's the right thing? It's an interesting one for HR leaders to think about. For example, we think about creating a culture, but that's going to need to be continually looked at every 6+ months, continually evolving. I don't know what the answer is, and I sound a bit like I'm waffling, but I get it's just such a big thing, isn't it? It's kind of like, there's this big thing of we want to create a culture that works for everybody, but we all know that everyone's got different needs right now, more so than they had before, or maybe they didn't before. Maybe we just didn't know what they needed before. Maybe that was more the case, actually. I don't know. And then how do you keep that pulse check of the right culture that you're creating, that it still resonates, to your point, Wendy, so that that top talent doesn't walk? How do you make sure that doesn't happen?
How does it resonate, and how do you measure it? Like,
absolutely.
How do you even know how people feel unless you create an environment where people can have that ability to be open and honest and share and drive that? And I think that we could talk for hours about this stuff, which is really exciting. And again, another reason why I absolutely adore having the time with you today. Emma, finally, what's the big hot topic, passionate thing that you're caring about this year? If there's one thing that you want to make happen, and it could be a personal thing, it could be a professional thing, what's the thing that really gets you on your soapbox this year?
Oh, brilliant question. Personal thing, moving into a new home that's being renovated, and fingers crossed being able to do that, knowing nothing about how things are going to be in terms of can we physically go and renovate somewhere that we don't live in right now. So that would be a big thing for me personally this year. I would say what kind of gets me excited from a kind of work sense, just continuing to see the team grow, to be honest with you. And I think for us at LACE, in the organisation that I work in, we're on a growth trajectory. We have a really tight-knit family feel, as you've mentioned, Wendy. We want to keep that. And I'm personally very passionate about that. And for me, it'll be really exciting to see how we keep making that happen as we grow as well, and how that changes.
A very careful balance, and we're on the same journey over here, and it is a careful balance, because as you bring new personalities into that family feel, the one thing that's constant is change, and when you're bringing new personalities in, it's so important you have the right blend of diversity. And I always like to say to my team that they've all got gifts, and everyone's got a gift to give, whether it's, somebody who's particularly, powerful in one area or is really knowledgeable in a different area, but everyone's got a gift to give. And it's how do you keep that balance as you grow? Wow. Emma, good luck with that renovation. I look forward to seeing the pictures when I can finally see you again. Finally, for all the viewers, because this became a bit of a trend, 5 o'clock somewhere, I'm hoping people get to see it on a Friday night. What at 5 o'clock on a Friday night, when you're finishing a very busy working week, do you like to have as a little tipple, or what's your drink of choice?
I mean, 5 o'clock normally is about right. Every now and then maybe it might be 4 o'clock. Depends. It used to be when we were always in the office together, the drinks would come out at 4 o'clock as a bit of a social. Nice. Be they alcoholic or not, dependent on your preference. So my fiance and I have tried to keep that going every now and then. I might go give him an Aperol spritz, or maybe I'll go make myself one, as that's probably my tipple of choice on a Friday.
Very nice, very nice. Well, I was trying to do dry January, so mine at the moment is a Horlicks. Very boring. We need to get back to London. But Emma, thank you so much. I really look forward to being on a webinar with you again soon, and thanks very much for your time today. You take care of yourself.
Likewise. Lovely to see you, Wendy. Have a good one.
See you later.